The following is a presentation of the Broadband Universe, brought to you in part by Vitruvi, the end-to-end GIS-based construction management platform that connects asset owners, operators, general contractors, and subcontractors for unmatched project control and collaboration. Manage every aspect of your telecommunications or utility infrastructure construction program with Vitruvi. Build faster, reduce costs, improve quality. Book your demo today on vitruvisoftware.com to see how we can help you build at scale. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Broadband Universe podcast. I'm Craig Corbett, and it is a pleasure to welcome today's guest, Darren Farnan, the General Manager of United Fiber in Savannah, Missouri. Darren, welcome to the Broadband Universe.
Hey, Craig, I appreciate being here and look forward to talking to you a little more.
Absolutely. Had the great privilege of running into you at the recent Tech Advantage event in Nashville, an unbelievable conference, and so glad that we had a chance to meet, have a conversation, and what we shared there I thought would be a phenomenal bit of content for the folks that watch the Broadband Universe. Many will not be familiar with the United Fiber story. Give us that 30,000-foot overview of how it all began.
You bet. Well, and you talked about Tech Advantage. We're an electric cooperative. Obviously, that's where we began 80 plus years ago now, and we're a fairly small cooperative as well. Only about 10,000 meters, 7,500 members roughly. And only about 2.5 meters per mile, so we're extremely rural, located in northwest Missouri. So that's not a scenario you typically look at building fiber to the home, as you well know. So we had been involved in a number of other businesses. I've been with the co-op now for over 25 years, but dealing from everything from television services to wireless internet. That's kind of where we started, and as we progressed, we just continued to talk to our membership. We did surveys and it just kept kind of moving. It's like we need better broadband. And so back in 2010, during the American Recovery Act at that time, we decided to put in an application, not necessarily thinking we would get it, but we thought, well, this is the time to try. So we did, and in about 14 of our substation areas, and we were awarded a little over $21 million on a grant loan, and that got us started. So again, that's kind of where this all evolved from. At that time, we did a survey of our membership in those areas, and 89% did not have access to 4x1 services. So that's how bad it was in those areas. So we knew someone needed to do it. So we kind of threw our hat in the ring, and it's just really grown immensely since then.
It is amazing. You talk about being one of the original recipients and winners of the ARRA funding, and that was a wonderful kickstart to the efforts. But one of the other things that really caught my attention, when you talk about averaging only 2.5 meters per mile, it is amazing that you have had the ability to grow United Fiber as much as you have, given that lack of density. Right. Because in so many places across the country, providers will look at that and just say, no thanks, we're not going to make the investment. But obviously, finding the funding worked well for you and the leadership there at United Fiber. Talk about that.
You bet. Well, I guess what's the saying? Necessity is the mother of invention. But we were in a position we were one of the highest rate-wise. We were one of the highest electrical cost co-ops in the state as well, just from that very thing, from that density, lack of density. And so, we were always looking for ways to kind of make our members' lives better. That's really where it starts. But our board, thankfully, was open to the fact, once we got that initial round of funding to kind of get us started, and that, if I remember right, that was about 5,000 total passings out of the whole thing. Okay. So we thought, if we could ever get to 2,000 or 3,000 subs, that's pretty good. And so we continued to, we started on that build. By the time we started, we were already getting requests from some areas within the communities that we didn't serve electrically, but our board was open-minded enough and really took an approach of took a regional approach rather than just our co-op approach. And so they knew that it was going to be good not just for our membership but for the whole area. And so fast forward to 2015, we had the largest local healthcare provider in St. Joe, Missouri, which is a town of about 80,000, wanted us to connect a number of their buildings. So we started off that while we were constructing those rural markets. Didn't think we were really ready, but couldn't turn down the opportunity. And then we started meeting with our communities, and we met with two communities, and one was smaller, about 1,200 people, and then another one of about 10,000 people, and our board allowed us to go in and build with them. One was their municipally owned electric service, so obviously it allowed us to build cheaper, in that community. So they allowed us to take that on, and since then, that initial community, we have over a 70% take rate in that community, since 2016. So that really springboarded. I think the board saw the success. We knew, to your point, where I'm going with this is we had to have more funding, or we had to bring revenue in from other sources. So those community builds and commercial builds, along with the additional funding, which we're now up to just under $60 million through different programs, through the original ARA, through CAF2, through RDOF, and now just recently with our Missouri Broadband grant applications, almost $60 million that we've been able to bring in. And again, along with those 44 communities that we've now built, have really brought that revenue in to help us reach those last mile areas that we're getting out in such a rural market.
Darren, congratulations on an unbelievable growth. You talk about serving 44 communities, getting people connected that weren't connected, and that's transformational. And we're not talking only about the residential opportunity for that, but from an economic standpoint, the growth from the world of business in that part of the state, I know, has been assisted so much. When you talk about the growth, I think the numbers are staggering. You mentioned the co-op, the electric co-op, with just less than 8,000 members. Your current fiber subscriber count dwarfs that. Talk about that number.
Yeah, so again, we're at, I think at the end of this month, we'll be right at 28,000 total subscribers on our fiber services. So yeah, we're getting near 4 times the size of where we started off with our electric membership. But it's such a great story. I mean, and really more than that, it's done so much for the region. As we went through COVID, as many other providers, that we thought we were busy before, and then just the demands and trying to keep kids educated and trying to keep people working from their homes or even their businesses in these smaller communities. And it was the demands were just incredible. But if we hadn't have had that foundation, we didn't have 28,000 subscribers at that time, but we were, we have nearly 3,500 miles of fiber, laid throughout northwest Missouri, basically from the Iowa border down to the north edge of Kansas City, for those that, don't know where we're talking about. But in those markets, I don't know how we would have gotten through that COVID timeframe, because as I mentioned before, when we originally, a lot of those areas had, that didn't have 4x1, almost 90% that didn't have 4x1 service back when we started this venture, wouldn't have been much better, I don't think. So, an area largely left behind by some of the major carriers. And so I'm just thankful that, sometimes the need was there. The service has been there. And like I said, it's been such a great service with getting fiber to the home. These people have gone from, really poor DSL to maybe satellite internet to world-class fiber broadband. So that's pretty exciting. And being from the area, it's really fulfilling to see that. And our team's the same way. I mean, they live and work here, so it means a lot to them to be able to bring this service to these areas.
Well, no doubt. And I've always been amazed at the conversations that members of a team will have with their family, their friends, the other members of the community, once they have gotten access after having never experienced that kind of ability to reach the world. And it is transformative. The home office there in Savannah, but you also got offices in Maryville, Excelsior Springs, Cameron, Smithville, St. Joseph. Talk about the growth of your team during this process.
You bet. So yeah, we started off back when we applied. We had about 4 employees that were working on some of our subsidiary services, and I think we're now at 67 employees. And just to think of the economic impact that just the amount of construction, the amount of crews that have been in this area have made such a huge difference. But I'm glad you mentioned the different local offices we have. I think part of the success has been, and I think for many co-ops that get into this type of a business, we're owned by our membership. So right. The electric co-op's a nonprofit owned by members. We're governed by a board that's all right here. That's what we talk about. Everybody's like, there's no decision makers anywhere else. They're right here in Savannah. There's nowhere else for this to go. But but that's a great thing because I think it separates us from a lot of typical telecom providers and trying to maintain that local presence, even though we've expanded well outside of our traditional electric footprint. We try to bring that same member mindset, that same thought process and service mindset to what we do in those areas, and it's been successful. I mean, as I think with any company, I think the closer you are to that customer, especially in this area that has been long kind of a low customer service score type business, we're seeing great results, and I think people really have that trust, that they know we're here, we're in the market and here to stay.
I'm a firm believer in just what you shared, in that cooperatives are uniquely positioned to be the leaders in the expansion of broadband across the country because of that investment in the community that existed long before fiber was a glint in the eye of anyone in the organization, because of that service mentality and knowing that you're serving your family, your friends, your neighbors. You're going to be a lot more likely to get great service in that situation than many of the others. You're watching the Broadband Universe podcast, brought to you by Lit Communities. Light up your community. You deserve better internet. By Vetro Fiber Map, radically simpler fiber management. And by Vitruvi, built faster, reduce costs, and improve quality. My guest today, Darren Farnan, the general manager of United Fiber. And Darren, when we talk about, you made mention of the plant, the more than 3,400 miles of fiber. That's a huge plant. Talk about the technology that went into building United Fiber.
Yeah, so when we started off, we're a Calix plant. When we started off this, we looked at a number of different vendors, and costs are always an issue. We decided to go that route because of just the long-term support and how long that a lot of that equipment had been in the field at the time. And so, you're building this plant. Again, we built it initially on our existing utility infrastructure, our electric infrastructure, which, to your point, that helped us because we're used to doing this. It's amazing to me, the more you get into this, how similar the electric business and the telecom business are, even kind of the way the networks are set up. It's very, very similar. We were used to doing those type of things, and like I said, and we could build it about a third of the cost on our existing electrical plant versus going underground. And I think that's why it's so important that, and we're glad to see today, you mentioned the NRECA meeting that we met at, that, there was a day, 8-10 years ago when there was hardly any discussion of fiber. And you kind of got looked at a little sideways sometimes when people heard you were doing this. But now, now there's well over 200 of the 900 co-ops throughout the country doing this. And I think it's fantastic because it makes federal dollars, it makes any local investment dollars go further because you already have that existing asset that you can take advantage of to get more fiber, more coverage out to people that need it. So.
You talked about the growth from a commercial customer standpoint, and I know that obviously the residential subscriber count is the lion's share of your sub count, but the business accounts have grown tremendously as well. Talk about how that has worked and the transformation that has gone on there.
You bet. So when we first started, we didn't, we weren't generating the revenue to build 44 communities all at once. That was not a thought. When we built that healthcare provider that I mentioned, in the process, we connected, I believe, 13 buildings initially, but when we counted, we passed about 800 other businesses in the process. So that was such a great opportunity for us there. But then it also, we did kind of a Main Street program. So many of our small communities, again, from this regional approach that our board took, because if you're living on a farm or, you're living just outside of town, you still need your local bank, you need your local clinic, you need all those things to remain healthy. And it was really hard for a lot of these local communities to keep that. And so we did a Main Street program, even though we couldn't afford to build the community necessarily early. We usually built through town on Main Street because that's where all the businesses were, and we would hook them up. It started generating more revenue, and then we went back as we generated more revenue, and then built the rest of the communities. So that commercial presence, especially early on, was really critical to us, just because of those revenue opportunities, and again, just what we thought was really needed to keep the vitality of those communities in place.
Something you just mentioned, I think, is key, and that was the visionary approach that the leadership, the board, took in approaching this, because that doesn't happen everywhere. Obviously, it has succeeded, and succeeded to a tremendous degree there for United. Talk about the challenges that came with the process of getting this up and running.
You bet. Well, I have to commend our board as well, because that is not a common thing, especially allowing us to build outside of our territory so quickly when not all of our members were even served at the time. But it's, that's probably one of the interesting challenges initially, was conveying that to the membership to help them understand. It's like, what we're doing is bringing revenue into the co-op. It's taking rate pressure off. It's doing some other things that really benefit us. And after the first couple of years, and they started seeing, like what was happening, they started getting it, right? They started understanding it. The first couple of annual meetings we had weren't, we had some questions, but they started understanding it. Like I said, in the last 4 years, we've given almost $10 million back through rate discounts, through advanced capital credit checks, things like that. So these are things that did not happen before. So it's just made a huge difference, and so that helped us overcome a lot of those challenges. And I'm happy to say that with some of these recent grants we've received, we now have all of our membership in Northwest Missouri will be covered by the end of the year that did not have at least access to 100 meg services. So that's been the prerogative of our board. If there's another another rural telephone co-op, things like that serving, we didn't necessarily have to build everything, as long as those members were being served by someone and getting at least 100 meg service. So again, I think a unique approach, but to your point, I think we were one of the smallest co-ops to ever get, I think we're the only co-op in the country, at least electric co-op, to have more membership, more customers on the fiber side than what we have electric membership, and even now more revenue that we're being generated from the telecommunications business than the electric business, because most of the companies that have met our numbers from other co-op wise are usually much larger companies starting off with. So it's really been necessary. It's really been beneficial. So it's been a true win-win.
Obviously, this has been a phenomenal success in so many different ways, and congratulations to you and your team for how you have approached this. It is always wonderful. We've referenced the Tech Advantage, the NRECA event. It is so wonderful to see those who have been in the co-op world for decades become enthused when the light comes on, no pun intended, but when the light comes on to what fiber can do to change the lives of their members in the co-op and the businesses in the footprint. And it's exciting, because the phenomenal growth that United Fiber has made, obviously, you are just a freight train that keeps on going. And I'm always curious about feedback that you and the other team members get when you are out and about in the community. Talk about that, if you would.
Well, it's always kind of funny. You mentioned the local aspect of it. It's like you don't want to wear your logo shirt into Walmart, because you're going to be there a while, usually talking to people and needing to pull your maps out too to see where they are. But that is the great thing. I mean, it's like we get typically hundreds of people hitting our website a week, trying to find out, hey, do you have service here? Do you have service there? And so that demand has been kind of the staggering thing, really, to see that. I mean, like I told you before when we talked the first time, it's like I'd like to say that we envisioned all this to start off, but we didn't. We were just trying to get service initially to some of our members to help out, to help an issue that they needed help with, and it's really growing. It's taken on a whole life of its own. But I think that is the difference. We talk about that local service. We're trying to always to look at new ways. How can we use this network, for new services, for new things. We're looking at some things with cameras, with and security. We're looking at how can this help in the rural areas in a healthcare market where you don't have to drive 30, 40, 50 miles to get to a hospital, or you don't have to take your grandmother from a nursing home to a hospital to get a test done that could be done there locally. So just looking at all these ways. I don't think we even know today, how this network will eventually be used, but we're seeing more and more demands. We've seen the growth just from our individual customers of how much more is being used, every day.
That is a perfect segue as we wind down the conversation. I have to ask you to break out the crystal ball, look 5, 10 years down the road, and tell me what you see for United Fiber.
Well, I see continued growth. I think we still see great demand. We're still running, gosh, 600 to 800 installs a month, so still an awful lot going on. We see just more and more uses for the network. We're starting to do more on our electric side about how this can provide other services, both not just for telecom services in the house, but for electrical services. We're seeing more managed services. This is one thing that I know Calix has been focused on, but we're looking into security systems. We're looking into we're offering a service called Protect IQ, which basically just provides cyber protection to all the devices inside the home that people may not understand. I think sometimes people get this in and they're like, gosh, what do we do with this now? What do we do with this network, or how do we do this, or how do we do that? So I see us offering more services on the network that allow people to make better use of it. And how that works. I think telehealth, more education. I just think we're going to see more and more services come available as the years move on.
And it will be exciting to see that growth happen. And Darren, I cannot thank you enough for the opportunity to learn about what you and the United Fiber team have done. A phenomenal success story. Can't wait till we have a chance to circle back down the road and see what else has gone on there in your part of Missouri. But greatly appreciate the opportunity to share that story with our viewers.
Well, we appreciate being on, Craig, and happy to do it anytime. We love telling the stories.
Absolutely. On behalf of Darren, thanks for letting us be a part of your day. We'll see you next time right here on the Broadband Universe. So long, everyone.